Welcome to another Forensic Happy Hour. Lee Reber here, and I think, I always say, hey, another great guest, but this is going to be really, I'm going to be kind of a guest on this. As with Ali Mellon and with cybersecurity stuff, I've always been really intrigued by it because I kind of do the digital forensic side of it. But obviously, especially some of the things that are going on now, I think that this is going to be educational for us all. So hopefully you guys find it, because I'm just going to be sitting back drinking beer as I listen to all the great stuff as we have here. So, Ali, hello, and thank you. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
All right, and so again, thank you very much for coming on and doing this. Obviously, I know you're busy and get these things going on. So the first thing that I want to do is tell us, what kind of got you into the cybersecurity? I mean, did you start out as, hey, I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden the light switched, or was there something in your life or your school or anything else that you said, hey, this is some cool stuff, and this is how you started, and then just go into that and just tell a little bit, in between, and then where you are now.
Yeah, totally. I like starting here because it's very random. First, I want to thank you so much for having me, and also a huge thank you to Women's Cybersecurity Society, who helped me get in touch with you. So I'm very happy to be here. So I actually started in security when I was in college. I was getting my degree in computer engineering at Boston University, and I saw a cybersecurity class my senior year, and I was very excited to take it and didn't really think it would be easy, but thought it would be fun. Um, so I joined that, and it was so hands-on. I loved it. For our midterm, we actually had to hack into a server. So it was like very much so this like very fun, very interactive class. The professor was great. And we had like a year-long project that we had to do. And you were supposed to either replicate someone else's security research or do your own. And so me and two friends of mine actually opted to do our own research. We ended up hacking the Square Reader. And my professor thought that the project was so cool that he suggested we submit to Black Hat USA. And so we did that, actually. And it took many weeks of fighting over font size and like all of the little details. But we got accepted, and it was really amazing. And so the summer after my senior year of college, I was in Las Vegas speaking at Black Hat, and it was this amazing, amazing introduction to security and to that whole world. So, of course, as comes along with those types of events, I ended up on CNN and Fox News and CNBC, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to get out of this now. Like, I'm in it. And I really, really loved it. And I loved the community, to be honest. I thought that everyone was so nice and so welcoming, even though it was really my first experience with security. So it was incredible. And I actually, at the time, I was doing a lot of mobile app development. And I kind of took a step back from security, but always continued to really think about it and want to get back in it. I was developing a series of mobile apps for universities, and I was like slowly mapping out a security one that I wanted to make. But I got an opportunity to join the team at Cybereason, and I was very excited to be able to get back into security. So I've spent the last 2 years at Cybereason. I'm on the security team now, on the infrastructure security and product security side of things. So it's been really, really great to be back in the space, and I'm loving it. I'm doing a really big mix of things, from everything from a lot of the internal stuff, like third-party software reviews, the quote-unquote unsexy stuff, but also giving a lot of talks at events on things like election security and ransomware and mobile security, of course, since I have that mobile security background. So it's been a really, really great experience, and I'm so happy to be back in the space.
Yeah. So I mean, One of the things that I'm passionate about, if you didn't know, I do mobile phones, right? That's kind of what I've always done,
Nice.
on the forensic side of it. And so I'm extremely intrigued by not only one, obviously development of apps because they are kind of the bane of my existence a lot of the time, especially doing a lot of the forensic side of it. Simply because you know, I always go on kind of the bandwagon type of stuff of it because if I look at an investigative side of it, we're just trying to find the bad actor of hey they sent this message or they have this message or they utilize this IP or these all this type of stuff, right? And so so my thing is, and I don't want to say the similar, but bear with me. So you take like a mobile app, and I always say, okay, if I'm going to be a bad guy, if I'm a bad actor, or I'm going to be doing things, I'm not going to necessarily be utilizing WhatsApp, Telegram, some sort of iMessage or some sort of with the communication. I see it more as kind of utilizing Words with Friends, Clash of Kings, all these types of applications that have, say, a chat functionality, but not necessarily the thing that they do. Right? I'm communicating utilizing these. So, now to bring into your side of it, would you see more of, say, the vector that you're going to be looking at, or these types of apps that are sold on, say, the Play Store on Apple? Are those kind of that you're you know what? It's just an app type of thing that are just take down the dynasty, right? Are those that aren't necessarily the ones that people are looking for, the ones that are being installed and completely opening back doors? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Totally agree. 100%. I think that that was one thing that, especially in the early days, like app development at the end of the day is really easy to get into. It's not too challenging to get your first app on even the iOS App Store.
Speak for
And of course,
yourself.
Google Play.
Yes, ma'am.
And well, of course, Google Play is even easier. There are a lot of examples online. Like you can make a calculator app, and it's fun and cool to do. But these are not like your first app. You're not thinking about security. Your second app, you're not thinking about security.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, at the end of the day, it's really important, but I think that there are a lot of applications on both the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store that just don't take security seriously. And not to say there's anything wrong with the developers that are making those applications or anything like that. And I think that Apple in particular has introduced a lot of frameworks in order to help people make their apps more secure. But it is just another thing that you have to worry about. And I talk about this a lot in the context of election security, but it's very applicable here as well. I think that there's a culture clash between tech and, in this case, security, where especially with mobile app development, you just want to get the feature out, you just want to get the app out, you just want to get the update out. And security is not a top priority. It's about being better than the competition and making this cool app that people actually want to play. So you end up in situations where apps just, they are not taking security seriously, or they're not even considering it in some cases, or they don't even know to consider it. Like the number of programs for kids in college to make their first app, or to make some app as like a startup, a new startup, it's incredible and it's really powerful and great, but there's not a lot of security being taken seriously there.
So if we look at that, and especially on the security side of it, and so this is something I talk about as well, is for example, Apple making things more secure, not even going and taking or MDM software, not to be able to back things up. But where's the fine line that you have from a user standpoint of this is a pain in the ass that I have to do this, that they're making me do this, and I mean, where's that fine line? Because for me, obviously the companies, the developers, as in when the manufacturers or the hardware developers are thinking of the safety of the device and the information that's stored on there. But as a user, the usability of it and the UI UX is like, I mean, that's billions of dollars are kind of spent on that, and you start looking at, but do people actually care about the security, or do they just want to be able to use it?
I think that they want both. I mean, I personally am very greedy. I want secure things and I want things that work well. And I think everyone wants that. You face that problem in enterprise security as well. It's challenging and it takes a lot of critical thinking and a lot of planning. But I do think that it's possible to reduce risk in these types of situations. But it depends. I think that it's perhaps not a reasonable expectation for people who are just like, for example, making their first app. I don't mean to pick on these people, but it might be an unreasonable expectation for them to make a totally secure app. At the same time, if it's their first app, they're probably not making something that's like actively sending text messages between individuals or whatever the case may be. It's probably a simpler application with less users. So I think it's a balancing act, but there's definitely a dividing line where you have to start taking it seriously. And that might even just come down to how many users you have.
So when you look at, and when you start looking at yours, because I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as an app security or, looking these or working for, a company to go in to make sure that, their devices and what they're using and what they're sending out to their employees or their customers. I mean, what are some steps that you take to help them understand? Because sometimes it's difficult, right? To have that C-level person you're trying to explain to them is like, dude, you're super dumb because you have this on here. But I mean, how do you go about and what do you look for? What are these things that you can go and assist or can give, to the people that are watching this or going to watch it to help them, because they might be in your shoes, right? They have to explain to their boss of, yeah, we can't have this Clash of Kings and we can't have these types of things. I mean, what kind of information can you give to them?
Yeah, very cool question. So at this point, I'm more on the enterprise security side of things, and we are thinking a lot about at Cybereason and myself more broadly because of my mobile background, are thinking a lot about securing mobile devices, what that means, where that goes in the priority list. Because I think that what I've seen is that mobile is not a priority for enterprises, which
It's crazy.
for many enterprises, which I think makes sense, to be honest, because there's a lot that security teams have to do. There's a lot to prioritize. And at this point, I think that for most security teams, it's just unreasonable to throw another device on there, especially with how relatively immature the defense of mobile devices is for enterprises. But all of that said, I think that it is something that should fall into the priority list, especially when you get to the point where you're more comfortable with, say, you have your own EDR. If you have your own EDR, you can probably start branching out into mobile threat detection or some equivalent. And the reason that I say that, and you know what, I want to take a step back from that too, because it's a mix between the IT side of the house and the security side of the house. Because on the IT side of the house, you have MDM, which I think that most people or most organizations have set up or should have set up. And then when your security team gets to the point of being more advanced, you can jump into something like a mobile threat detection solution. Of course, a lot of this depends on your organization either providing mobile devices to people or having their employees be comfortable having like mobile threat detection solutions on their personal devices, which is very unlikely.
Right.
So it's very messy, ultimately it's very messy. I have talked about this a lot and it's crazy to think about, but 60% of devices accessing corporate data are mobile devices. Like, that's a crazy number, but it's totally realistic. And it's especially more so when you're thinking about the world we're operating in right now, where you're stuck at home. And not only are you probably using more of your own personal devices for work because it's just in your home setting, but you also have to worry about things like, oh, I have to take my kids out so that they can actually go outside today.
Right.
And go to the playground. And in those circumstances, you're going to want to have your phone on you in case something happens at work, you need to respond to a Slack message or whatever the case may be. So I think that it's, in answer to your question, long story short, it's very complicated. It's a very difficult problem. But I think it needs to start with really identifying what your policies are around whether or not people are allowed to use their mobile devices. And even just that first step, I don't think a lot of organizations have taken. Just defining that policy around if they're going to allow mobile devices.
So,
And then if you are, you definitely need a mobile threat detection
yeah,
solution.
exactly. And so we're coming to, I mean, again, kind of this. I mean, one of the things that, again, the standing on a box and shouting is, going in and talking, especially at the enterprise level, of people that to understand that. And I would say that the number of devices or endpoints that are going to be a mobile device connecting to an enterprise, I would put it over. I would I would put it over 60%, simply because one, you have, if I'm going to have a corporately owned device, obviously you can now manage the entire device, right? You're pretty secure. You're able to do that as long as you're operating and you have how it's going to be utilized within the enterprise. But I would put it way over 50% of the enterprise and that side of it are going to either one have a corporate owned device or bring your own device, right? They might have both that they're operating, and they're still operating, and they're allowing them to connect to that corporate network that you might have, and with the exposure. And if we go and we look at even a BYOD device that you can only manage with an MDM solution, you can't manage the whole device, right? No one's going to say, for sure, fantastic, manage my whole device, so that when I'm sending that Instagram photo, or yeah. So the issue, it's, again, I 100% agree with you, is with that policy of how they're going to manage that, and it is extremely messy. Because if you don't have the policy in place, or you say, okay, fantastic, you can come to work, BOD, but understand, if you don't sign, or you don't realize this is a policy, sign your name on it, that at any time we can examine the device if we detect that it's the endpoint that's involved. But someone's going to go, oh, fantastic, yep, here you go. Or okay, you're blacklisted from the now to the corporate network. And so again, it's a crazy, crazy world. And again, I agree with you, with now people working from home. How secure are their networks, right? How secure are they at their home? They're going through a VPN. Okay, fantastic, but your Wi-Fi is password 123, or you have all of these things, and you can't go and send an
Yeah.
IT person out to now go and say, hey, I'm going to come to. We have 50,000 employees. We need to go to every one of their homes and make sure that, one, they're who's doing that. So
No.
again, it's a great time to be in cybersecurity, quite honestly, because of all of this, and especially on the mobile side of it. I think that's huge, right? I don't. Is there a way to solve this? Uh,
I think it comes down to start, it really comes down to deciding how you want to approach it. As an organization, you have to make the decision if you're going to allow people to access corporate data on their personal devices. And I think that's a super hard decision, because that automatically means that there are a certain number of people that, if you don't want to allow that, you're going to have to buy them their own devices. And that's an
People are like,
expense.
yeah, okay, wow,
Yeah. um, and then continue to pay for them.
right.
So I can understand why it's a decision people don't want to make, but that's the first step. And from there, it just gets stickier depending on if you do allow those bring your own
Right.
devices.
It's like, because you've been to Black Hat. When I went to Black Hat, and it's one of those things you're just like going, so one, don't have my phone, not going to bring it.
Yeah.
Laptop, nope, none of that stuff. You might as well just go in and open up your notepad with your paper and try to do that, right? So, but to be honest with you, I mean, we're kind of aware of that. People in the industry are kind of aware of that. But how many people are walking around still to this day knowing the things that they know, and the things that are on the news all the time, of people at Starbucks with a honeypot doing all of these things, but they continue to still do it. So I mean, what? Any advice for the world? I don't know.
I think it's funny, because I think about this a lot, especially when we're looking, like, for example, our research team Cyberies and Nocturnus, they came out with a piece of research fairly recently this year that is a piece of mobile malware. And it was specifically targeting financial services applications on mobile devices. Very interesting. It basically masquerades as a legitimate application. The user downloads it, it gets access to the accessibility features, and then it just starts collecting data and collecting keystrokes and all of that and sends it to the C2, bypasses two-factor authentication, the whole 9 yards. So a really fascinating piece of malware. And like immediately you're thinking, okay, here are the steps that you can take to prevent this from actually getting on the device. But then you realize that you're talking to cybersecurity people, and the people this application is targeting, they're the people who are actually accessing those financial applications for businesses. And that's not the cybersecurity team, that's the people in finance. And they're not in this room having this conversation with you.
Yep.
They don't understand the threat, and they don't understand how to prevent it. They don't understand why it's important. So it's very much so. I feel like almost like we're in a bubble of cybersecurity people who all understand the problem, and they're all talking to each other in the bubble. But outside of the bubble, there's this whole world that doesn't understand, and in many cases is like very aloof about the whole thing. So when thinking about that at the enterprise level, what's important to me, and this is so much harder now that we are remote, is building relationships with people on the team. Not like making sure that they're not scared to come to you when they have a question or a problem.
So
Which
I
think
just clicked on this. And
yeah, no, really. And that's one of the things that's become so difficult now that we're all remote, because I feel like in a normal day, if you're at work and you click on a link you're not supposed to and something happens, you can go to someone you trust and say, I think something's wrong. But when you're remote, you're like, okay, this just happened in my home. Maybe I can find a way to like make it okay, and no one has to know and no one's around to see it.
Yeah.
But
Which
it's a big problem.
I think that's interesting. The point that you made is it's kind of preaching to the choir, right? You explain a situation to your colleagues who see it every day, and they're like, yeah, who would do something like that? But if you come to the audience and we start thinking about, okay, like the finance thing, some phishing thing that comes from the CFO, people are like, oh, fantastic. Oh, yeah, what? I'm getting a raise or whatever that you have. So, with that targeted and trying to help and understand that at that level, or the audience that you're speaking to, I think that's extremely important in trying to, because it's almost, wow, maybe we should start a conference or something for like end users or something that just come to this that you can actually explain to people. Because I think that, and I know that you do a lot of conferences, as well, is that you speak to people that know it and they're like going, yeah, exactly. And you're just talking, they're just looking like, who would be dumb enough to do that? Well, I mean, seriously, it's
Yeah.
it's exactly that that thing that you go in and you do this, but it's kind of, what do they always say? It's that person behind the keyboard, or the weakest link is obviously that person sitting in the chair. So what advice? I mean, do you go in and have or your group have an education for maybe your clients, or that how you're going to go to, if you're working some event, that you can go to the, I don't want to say low level people, but those people that might not be in in the cybersecurity realm, that you can go in and explain this to them?
Yeah, it's funny too, because I think we see this problem with government a lot too. Maybe because it's just so much more high profile than the day-to-day things, but you see a lot of people who see politicians trying to talk about cybersecurity, and they're like,
It's
"Oh my God, can you
embarrassing.
believe this guy? It's so embarrassing." And it's like, it is, it's true, but like, let's help them.
Yeah.
We don't have to just sit there on Twitter and make fun of them. We could
Right.
actually try to help them.
Right.
And reach out. And so we're building, actually, one of my colleagues who is on my team, Lodrina Attorney, is building our security awareness program right now. And every month we talk about a new cybersecurity topic. And it's been really sensational to have people like just get a little taste of the basics. It doesn't have to be like an hour-long HR training. It's just a little thing like, what is DLP? And why am I getting this message from you guys that says this email was blocked?
Right.
And I think it's the thing that we really need. And also just to make like security fun. The other day I sent around there's this Google phishing test that you can take online. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like very cute. They basically have a bunch of Gmail messages and you have to tell whether or not it's phishing. And you get a score at the end depending on how many you got right. And so I just sent it around to the team and a bunch of people did it and it was like a
That's
nice
actually
fun
really
thing.
good. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't have any like no one was upset when they didn't get 8 out of 8,
They're
you know?
like,
It was
seriously?
just like a nice thing.
Right. Right.
So I think trying to infuse a little fun into security is a nice thing to do, and it makes people more open about it.
So let's go on to obviously the current condition that everyone's been in for the last 7 months. What are some of the things that as an investigator? So let's talk to investigators, or sorry, let's talk to those people that are within it or trying to get into cybersecurity. They're trying to, whether it be, they're in college, they're in high school, right, or they're just watching this. What is something that you can help them, start off, like you did. Obviously, you and doing with the CS and everything else, so which is a fantastic, starting, especially with mobile and with that type of investigation. But how can they start out? What kind of stuff can you help them out with?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. The first thing I highly recommend is reaching out for a mentor. There's a great person online. Her name is Tanya Janka, and she does a
Shout
mentoring month.
outs are always
Yeah,
good.
shout outs. All we're doing is shout outs for everyone.
Exactly.
Um, she has a mentoring Monday, and every Monday she just posts and says, "Hey, if you're looking for a mentor, let me know, and I'm going to connect people with mentors." And I think that that's the best way. I have several mentors that help me on my journey, and it makes such a huge difference. And they don't even have to be cybersecurity related, but if that's the thing that you are struggling the most with, then definitely. And I think that one thing that's really important to know too is everyone in the community is so nice and so willing to help. So if you reach out to someone on Twitter or LinkedIn, they're probably going to respond,
Yeah.
like most likely.
Right.
The other thing I highly recommend is we are in a very unique situation right now because we're all remote, and there are a lot of conferences that have either happened or are happening that are free for the first time ever and used to cost a lot of money. So go to them. Go to as many as you can. Go to some SANS trainings, whatever. And it doesn't even matter if you sit there the whole time and only get every third word because it's too technical or whatever the case may be. Just to experience it and get a feel for the space and the words people are using, because it is like learning a new language for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I'll recommend, I'll do another shout out. If you are a minority or a marginalized group, reach out to Women's Cybersecurity Society. That's the nonprofit that helped get me on here today, and they provide a lot of support to people through programs and services. So for
Yeah.
anyone interested in a cybersecurity career.
Yeah, that's great. And it's extremely important because every conversation that I've had throughout this time that I've been doing this show, it all comes down to kind of community, right? And would you agree that with the last 7 months, as has a community, I don't want to say grown, but do you see maybe grown closer, some more resources that people can utilize, more communication? Do you see that? Have you seen that as a positive, or in the cybersecurity side of it?
I think so. I think that it's been really nice to see how people are trying to connect when they're not able to see each other in person. Because I think that there were a lot of connections made, obviously, at conferences, just like seeing people you see at every single conference. But now, since we don't really have that networking opportunity, instead, I'm seeing a lot of people making Slack groups or making channels on Discord, and you get the opportunity to connect with this really wide array of people. That's really refreshing. I think InfoSec Twitter is stronger than ever. So that's another option if you like a little drama. But yeah, I think it's been nice. And we've also, of course, seen a huge uptick in the number of participants at these conferences because they're just available now for people to join. So definitely. What do you
So
think?
yeah, so do you think that as part of the growth of well, do you think that there's going to be more opportunities or jobs in the cybersecurity side of it, digital forensic side of it, because of the amount of events? I don't want to say crimes because they're not obviously always crimes, but these the digital events that are happening, these investigations, because of people at home, people utilizing, open public Wi-Fi. People, do you see that as now people are like, oh crap, we got to now hire, 10 extra, investigators or analysts to do this? Do you see that it opening up? Instead of saying, okay, a company says, oh, you know what, we can get by with the one person that we're utilizing.
So it's an interesting question. In general, in talking to our customers, I have seen people say that there hasn't been an uptick in attacks. And I know that I've been seeing a lot of vendors saying that there has been. So it's an interesting perspective from people that I talk to frequently in the space. However, all of that said, there's a huge talent gap in the industry. And there are a lot of people hiring. And I feel like there are a lot of open jobs. Some of them are more senior than others. But I think that, especially on the defender side, there are a lot of opportunities to get into cybersecurity. And the best thing you can do is just, if you don't think you can get the job, just apply to it and see what happens. Because
Interesting.
people are more willing to take people
Yeah,
than
and
you
so
think.
that's interesting, the defender side of it, but the companies are saying no, it's okay. It's actually we haven't seen that many. Is it because one, they're not able to say monitor that side of it? If at the remote at the home, they're able to go in and now utilize that. I guess I'm trying to just understand because I would I would disagree. I would think that because even if you just look at this simple little email phishing, the hey, you know what, your Amazon account, for some reason it's your billing, so you need to click on here and enter all your. I've seen more of those that have come across, maybe because I'm just staring at email all day, but you know I would disagree. I mean, what's your
Yeah.
personal opinion?
Maybe it may be regional. I know that, so the working from home aspect is definitely not a concern for these customers because they, like, Cybereason is an endpoint detection and
Right.
response company. So
Exactly.
everything's on the endpoint anyway. We're not so much worried about the enterprise network, but, or we are, but in a different way. the, it may be regional. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that definitely the target and like the way that they're approaching attacks is different. So for example, phishing attacks are very much so dependent on the lack of communication that we now have, the lack of ability to be in the office, a lot of stuff about COVID. But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think that it could also be by industry. There are a lot of different factors that I think would affect whether or not people are seeing more attacks.
Right.
But with our customer base, at least, they've been managing just seeing different types of phishing attacks, for example.
So how concerned are you with, obviously everything's connected, right? Whether it be small devices, whether it be large devices, whether it be airplanes, whether it be centrifuges, whether it be, all of these things as part of, if we just look at energy. I think that, as the education that's out there, the operators that are out there, have enough resources to be able to combat this, because obviously as we get more and more dependent upon things being completely controllable remotely, being able to go in and sensors, everything else is now connected. Even the airplanes, obviously, that are flying are connected to the ground and being able to be operated upon. So how does that freak you out? Because it freaks me out sometimes just thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I also want to say that just because our customers have not been seeing an uptick in attacks doesn't mean their
Yeah, of
security
course.
teams aren't understaffed.
Of course. Yeah.
And
I think they're always understaffed. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
it just comes down to the
and
dollars.
I also think that we've seen a shift in the appreciation of the security team more than it used to be, which is really interesting. I know that there's been a shift with a lot of CISOs where they've really been able, because of everything that's happened over the last year, to become a true partner to the rest of the C-suite and really be seen as someone who's able to handle incidents, as opposed to before then where they were kind of just someone who likes that shiny new toy that the security team gets to play with. So that's been a really big plus. And now I've forgotten your question. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about, you know what? Don't worry about it. People forget my questions all the time. And sometimes it's lucky I remember it because typically I forget what I ask. But so the question is actually everything's connected, right? You have airplanes that are connected. You have all these other types of devices that are all connected and can be accessed remotely. How does that freak you out?
Yes, it does freak me out. I think it's a very interesting point. It makes me wonder if next year we're going to see a lot more attacks, especially by nation state attackers that target devices used for home automation, like your Amazon Alexa or whatever the case may be, because then they have access to the network. They're able to get on your personal or corporate devices. So I'm definitely thinking about that. And I think that between that and what our CISO likes to call nation state bleed, where you see a lot more nation state toolkits being spread to cybercrime actors and those people who potentially aren't at the point where they're creating these types of toolkits, we'll definitely see more attacks around that space that really target like the easy prey at this point,
Yeah, yeah, and
much more so than the
yeah, and it's
laptops.
crazy because I do know a little bit about IoT devices and everything, and so one of the things with especially with Alexa, because I've done presentations on that, on some of the research that I've done, and shout out to Brian Moran, excellent if you're watching this, but some of the things, especially with Alexa, is it's extremely accessible to actually dump everything out of that, especially in Fitbit, everything that's stored, goes from a device to server based and within the cloud. It's extremely easy. And that's what freaks me out, especially with all the home automation, with the lights turning on, lights turning off, having these plugins, being able to have this plugin. Can I override this plugin? Can you do it? You can do it. And that's what's
Yeah.
because honestly, there's really no governing source. They come in and they completely come in and say, oh, fantastic, works with Samsung Hug. Oh, even better. You know what? It comes from this country, and they make, oh, fantastic. I'm going to have that. I'm going to hook it up. I mean, I did an analysis in Singapore. I'm like, this is on a drone. I'm like, hey guys, this is freaky. This is really fun, but watch this, and wind up going in and put Wireshark up to it into the connection. And wow, that's weird. Why is this IP from China coming in and completely sending this stuff out from a drone that you're flying
Wow.
around? And then people are like, oh, what? So again, it's one of those things that I mean, I think it's only going to get worse because there's a lot of things that are flooding and everyone wants to automate everything. So again, I just freaked out a little bit on you, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of stuff that are so connected that what do you do? Are you like, okay, I'm just never going to have one of those, or it's I don't know.
No, totally. I think it's a big problem. It's really interesting too, because I always think that that's our job as people who do security is to like, I glorify security sometimes and like I glorify what I do a little because why not? And I'll talk about it as protecting innovation. Like it's not our job to say like you can't use this cool new tech. It's like our job to say, okay, but here's how we're going to protect it so you
Right.
can use it,
Right.
and so how you can keep building these cool things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's really interesting
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. No. And so again, the point being is that there are so many opportunities, I think, for people. So many opportunities in, if we talk about the cybersecurity side of it, we talk about one, the incident response, because I'm pretty sure that, obviously you deal with the incident response side of it. And when, you're seeing, okay, this just happened. Now to what we need to do. And, and how I'm going to bring the segue into the digital forensics side of it is typically if we go and we identify something, especially at an endpoint that you have as, oh, okay, this occurred. Now we have to do the investigative side of it, which comes down to kind of a digital forensic side.
Mhm.
of going in and diving into, finding out exactly what occurred, how to propagate, where did it go, what are these types of things, what else do we need to be looking for? Because then obviously with the defense side. So I think it's all typically related, and there's opportunities, and obviously where you're at into now going into how do we harden those defenses to now how do we go in and dive in and find out exactly what happened, because data doesn't lie to me. I always tell people, I mean, you can go in and you look at it, data isn't going to lie to you, as long as you dive deep enough and to see it and to put those pieces together. So again, would you agree that obviously the opportunities I think are endless for people to do this? It just takes um, people saying, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to quit doing what I'm doing, and I'm just going to jump right into it, right? And I'm going to learn it within 3 months. So, what's a realistic expectation for someone that wants to get into it? I mean, obviously it's years and years, and you're never going to be, you might be the, not the master of none, but I mean, how can you go in? How should someone prepare? I know I asked you this before, but I mean, what advice can you give? Because where you're at, what you're doing, I mean, you've done and you speak at a lot of things. Even to speak just at Black Hat and put that stuff together is tremendous, tremendous feat to do that, to get into and involved in that. So how can someone be like you?
Um, don't try to be like me. This job is taken. but
Exactly.
um, but no, really, like to be the best that you can be. This is so cliche, and I hate that. And I wish I had a different way of saying it, but just do it.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. Like every time that someone has told me you're not ready to do that, I just do it. And if I fail, then I
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah.
And if I look like an idiot, I look like an
Yeah.
idiot. But you move on and you move into something better, and it teaches you a lesson. And that's the most important thing to me
Yeah.
is do it, make sure that it's something that speaks to you, and make sure that it's something that you know that you're going to be comfortable continuing doing. There's nothing worse than burning out
Yeah.
on something because you're trying to do something that is just way out of your league and you feel uncomfortable with, and it's just not working for you. So
Yeah.
you have to know
Yeah, and I
yourself,
think
you
that
know?
that's important. That's an important statement because it's a fear of failure that kind of goes and just makes people say, you know what, I'm going to do what I do. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. And unfortunately, we all fail, right? We all fail in the things that we
Yeah.
do, and it's just how you go and pick yourself up and do what you want to do. And I think that's great advice and not cliche. But and moving on to with that being said, a lot of people that I've talked to, it's crazy in this industry, is that they go, okay, I go to university. What'd you do in university? Yeah, I was going to be a psychologist. Dude, you're super awesome digital forensic guy right now. What are you doing? He's like, I don't know. All of a sudden, I saw this cool Commodore 64 and I started messing around with it and I was doing all this. I just dated myself, but you have all this other stuff, and now I'm gonna wind up going in and doing this digital print. I mean, honestly, I would say, and I'm not gonna percentage on it, but way over half of the people that in this industry on the digital forensic side of it started out selling insurance, doing some weird things that all of a sudden it just kind of hit them. They saw this computer and they went to a conference and they saw what someone did and they found this smoking gun in zeros and ones and they're like, oh my gosh, I just fell in love and I want to do this for the rest of my life. And now they've just blown it out. I mean, is that something that you see kind of in the industry? It's
Totally.
bizarre.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Very few people start from like an actual technical
Yeah.
background, which is super
Yeah.
cool because it's a very technical
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
But like I met this woman the other day who works over at Rapid 7. She's an infosec manager and she started in marketing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But she identified what she's passionate about, which is communicating well to others. And she identified a need on the security team and she filled that need.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have something that you're passionate about, just follow that, push on
Yeah.
that. And if it's involved in the security industry, even better, because you're going to find your niche.
Yeah.
And I think it is really fascinating. But it also makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
that people with these non-traditional backgrounds would like security because it is about different perspectives.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the coolest things about security is you can't just have a bunch of people who are all the same in security, or you will get hacked.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
ultimately, like you need to be able to understand the attacker's point of view. You need something contradictory, someone coming in there and saying, but what about this? But what about this?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, then you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think
And
that's super important to think about that, because you're actually going in and thinking you have to. I don't want to say you don't think as a bad actor, but you can't just go in and say, everything's rosy and everything else is kind of taking the other hat. I mean, what do they call that? Obviously you have white, black, gray, all that great stuff. That's cliche type of things, right? But so taking the perspective, I think that's very important for people to think.
no, you 100% have to think as a bad actor. You have to think as a bad actor and a good actor. You have to think of the whole spectrum. And then you need to be able to humbly accept the fact that you are one person with a limited number of perspectives, and other people are going to be able to add to that. If you think that you're the best person in every room, you are not going to go very far in
Yeah.
security.
Yeah, I think that's
And
important. That's very important to remember as a team side of it, because I know in security and that side of it it is big time team focused, right? Because you're never going to be the smartest person in the room, and if you think you are, you probably should leave that room, right? So, I know for a fact, especially on that security, and those teams that are put together are a team, and I think that's why they put themselves out as that.
totally. Yeah, you have to. That's one of the reasons that I think it's so cool. And one of the things that really showed me the true power of diversity is being in security, because you need those different perspectives. And you are never really going to be able to understand those perspectives as well as other people in the situations that they're in. And I just think that's so powerful. And it comes down to every form of diversity, from like the typical things that you think of with people of color and women and other groups, but also neurodiversity.
Mm,
Super important to have those perspectives as well.
right.
And just game changing a lot of times. These people come up with things that I'm like,
Wait,
how? Like, I
what?
never would have thought of this. Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
And it can be hard, but it's the good kind of hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And, again, I don't want to say the silver lining, because I always say that, but it comes down to really, it, it is, it's those people that have that, again, maybe it's not starting in the background, because I find those people have the most drive and the most, you come to work going, oh my gosh, how awesome is this going to be? Now, granted, if you're doing that every day, that's kind of weird, because we all have our days, right? But the majority of the time, if you're like, oh my gosh, I learned something new, I did this, if you take that one little nugget or something that you have learned, or just like you had said, you're like, hey, I didn't even think of it that way, is tremendous, right? Tremendous for mental growth, one, and for you kind of as a person. So, again, another factoid for people that are watching it. Okay, last question, because I told you I would keep you a long time because I talk a lot. But tell
It's my
me
pleasure.
how awesome, or one super, super awesome event. You dove in, you found this stuff. Just tell me something that I'm like, oh my gosh. And hopefully, it doesn't have to be like some TS or some top secrets type of thing. But give me something that people are like, okay, I'm going to get into that. I
Oof.
know you have a lot, but
Get into that as in get into security?
no, as in, why is someone saying, "Oh my gosh, yeah, we found this, they did this, and this, and we detected this on this particular endpoint." Any of those stories, any of these war stories they call them, right? That
Yeah,
you can share.
that's a great question. That's a hard question.
I know, I know. I
I think
once in a while I give those.
the coolest one, it's not really a war story, but it's something that I really loved and was this like really great team moment too.
Love it.
We held a security exercise this year, and it was like a tabletop exercise, and we had 60 people in the company attend, and we did it remotely because we weren't expecting to be remote, but we ended up remote. And it was like maybe a month after everyone had gone remote, and we have offices in London, Tokyo, Tel Aviv, and Boston. So it was like fully distributed. We are in the zone. We have this amazing scenario mapped out. We have the CEO and the COO and the CRO. We have them all in one room, and they have to figure out what to do in a security incident that we put 3 days before IPO. And it was just the coolest thing because you get everyone in the room and they're like, okay, this is whatever. Like, it's just a fake exercise. But you get 10 minutes in and the CEO is watching, like, what are you guys going to do now? And people got so into it. And it was like, it was actually happening. It was amazing.
That is cool.
And it really showed everyone the value of the work that we're doing, the value of the work that they do, and how everyone can work together and how like really impressive everyone on the team is technically. So it was awesome.
So I said that
It
was the
was
last question, but now you may be asking us. Remember, I told you I just make things up, right? So how important is it for a company to do like war games like that with the C-level people to one, I don't want to say show the worth of it, but honestly be prepared if it does occur. I mean, how important is that for? I mean, it's just like the old standard war games.
Oh, critical. I think it's critical. There is nothing that shows the immediate value and impact of the work that we're doing, like actually having someone have that oh shit moment. And that's what that was for a lot of people. And it was very gratifying because you don't think it's going to be that intense, but once you get into it, it is that intense. And it everyone left that exercise and was thrilled and was like, oh my God, this felt so real. I need to focus on security more. And that's the type of thing that's just invaluable. You can't, it's not sitting in front of people having like a 45-minute presentation where you're like, this is why this is important. It's actually making them live it.
Right. Yeah. I love it. No, that's great. That is probably one of the. I mean, that's great advice, really, for anyone to be able to do that, to put on some live exercises like that. No, critical. Okay, I told you I didn't want to keep you very long, but I did. So I want to thank you so much. It was great. It really, really was. And so
Thank you.
I want to say thank you so much for putting up on a Friday, right? So thank you. Have a great
Thank you so much
weekend,
for having
though,
me.
and we'll do it again.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's going to be good. Yes, this was kind of a little obviously out of my element, talking about on the cybersecurity side, not necessarily the digital forensics side of it. But again, it all comes together, especially if we start talking about that event and determining, going in and diving into that stuff for you. But I think there are a lot of great takeaways. Especially one with the teamwork, with the community, doing the exercise that you need to do to be successful, as well as just do it, right? Just do it. If you're thinking that, oh, you know what, this field looks so bitchin', I think this is something I need to make sure I get into, just do it. It doesn't matter where you're at, what type of work that you're doing. There's a lot of people that are here to support you and help you. So again, thank everyone for watching, and those people that obviously live and are going to watch it again. Thank you guys, and we'll be back again next week. So thank you guys. Everyone, have a great weekend.